The council chamber was the largest room on the station, built to hold representatives from 200 different species. The walls curved upward in a perfect dome, covered in screens that showed live feeds from 1,000 worlds. Today, those screens flickered with confusion. As delegates filed into their seats, Prelate Vexinar stood at the central podium, his crystalline body refracting the light into rainbow patterns across the floor. He had called this session to discuss trade regulations, a routine matter that should have been simple. But as he looked across the chamber, something felt wrong. The human section was empty. All 20 seats sat vacant. No Ambassador Kelvin Brooks with his usual coffee cup and data pad. No Commander Lisa Warren reviewing security reports. No junior staff members rushing between seats with updated information. The entire delegation had vanished. Vex Enar tapped his communication device. Where are the human representatives? His assistant, a small flying creature named Pip, buzzed nervously near his shoulder. Sir, we have tried to contact them. There is no response from their quarters. The docking bay shows that all human vessels departed 3 days ago. A murmur rippled through the chamber. The Arxian trade minister, a being covered in blue fur, stood up. Departed? All of them? This is highly irregular. We have treaties. We have agreements. Vex Einar felt a cold sensation spread through his crystalline core. 3 days. The humans had been gone for 3 days, and no one had noticed until now. How was that possible? Check the communication logs, he ordered. Pip's wings hummed as she accessed the station's systems. After a moment, her small voice carried through the chamber's speakers. There is one message, Prelate. Sent 72 hours ago from Ambassador Brooks. Display it. The screens around the dome switched to show a simple text message. No video. No explanation. Just words. On a black background. Humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council. Effective immediately. We wish you well in your future endeavors. Ambassador Kelvin Brooks. Human representative. The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted questions. Some demanded answers. Others called for emergency votes. The Keltharian defense coordinator, a massive creature with 6 arms, slammed one fist on his desk. This is a breach of protocol. They cannot simply leave without proper procedure. But they had. They were gone. Vexinar called for order, his voice cutting through the noise like crystal bells. Silence. We must approach this logically. He turned to Pip. Contact Earth. Contact any human colony. Find out what is happening. Over the next hour, the truth became clear. Every human embassy had closed. Every research station had been evacuated. Every human vessel in council space had returned to human territory. The borders of human space were now patrolled by automated defense platforms that politely but firmly turned away any approaching ships. Katie Morrison, a junior human analyst, had left her quarters in perfect order. Her desk was clean, her reports filed, her projects documented. But she was gone. In her final report, left deliberately in the center of her workspace, she had written something that made Vex Inar's crystalline structure feel heavy. The report analyzed the frontier crisis, a humanitarian disaster in the outer colonies. Millions of refugees needed food, shelter, and medical care. The council had been debating the proper response for 18 months. Committees had been formed, subcommittees had been created, proposals had been drafted, revised, and redrafted. Katie's conclusion was simple and damning. This institution has become incapable of decisive action when it matters most. We have attended 73 meetings about the frontier crisis. We have heard 400 hours of debate. We have produced 6,000 pages of analysis. And we have saved exactly 0 lives. Vex Inar read the words 3 times. He wanted to argue. He wanted to explain that proper procedure took time. That consensus required patience. That acting too quickly could cause more problems than it solved. But looking at the empty human seats, He realized that humanity had heard all of those arguments before. For 70 years, they had heard them. And now, they had stopped listening. The Civine science director, a gentle being named Korla, who had worked closely with human researchers, spoke quietly. "Did any of you actually read the proposals Ambassador Brooks submitted?" The chamber fell silent. "I did," Korla continued. "Over the past 6 years, he presented 17 different plans for council reform, 17 attempts to make our decisions faster, our responses more efficient. Every single one was blocked or delayed or changed until it meant nothing." The Arxian minister huffed. "Those proposals were too radical. They would have undermined our careful balance of power, and now the humans have undermined us by leaving," Korla replied. "Perhaps we should have listened." Quam. Vexinar dismissed the session. There was nothing to accomplish with everyone shouting. As the delegates filed out, still arguing, he remained at the podium, staring at the empty human section. His assistant Pip landed on the podium beside him. "Sir, there is another problem." "What now?" "The trade networks. The humans designed and maintained most of our shipping route optimization systems. Without them, we are already seeing delays. Several vessels have missed their windows." Vexinar felt that cold sensation again. "What else did they maintain?" Pip pulled up a list. It scrolled across the screens for several minutes. Defense systems, translation protocols, environmental controls, medical databases, emergency response coordination. "How long until we can replace their systems?" Vexinar asked. "Unknown, sir. Many of these systems are incredibly complex. The humans spent decades building them. We may not have anyone with the expertise to maintain them, let alone replace them." Vexinar looked around the empty chamber. For 3,000 years, the Galactic Council had stood as the pinnacle of civilization. They had maintained peace. They had fostered cooperation. They had built something that spanned the galaxy. But now, for the first time in millennia, he felt afraid. The humans had not attacked. They had not threatened. They had not demanded anything. They had simply walked away, quiet and final, leaving the council to discover just how much they had depended on the species they had taken for granted. In his quarters that night, Vexinar accessed the human databases one last time before they locked him out. He found a personal log from Commander Lisa Warren, written 1 week before departure. "We tried," she had written. "For 70 years, we tried. We believed this could work. We wanted it to work. But wanting is not enough. At some point, you have to accept that some things cannot be fixed from within. We are not leaving in anger. We are leaving in sorrow. And we are leaving while we still can." The database locked. The screen went dark, and Vexinar sat alone in the silence, wondering what came next. 3 months had passed since the humans left, and the problems were getting worse. Commander Nathan Price's security network had been the backbone of anti-piracy operations across 12 sectors. He had designed a system that allowed different species' military forces to share information instantly, coordinate responses, and track criminal vessels across vast distances. It had taken him 8 years to build, training officers from 60 different species to use it properly. Now it was falling apart. The Keltharian defense coordinator stood in the council's security center, watching red warning lights blink across the display. Each light represented a pirate attack. There were dozens of them. Before the humans left, they saw maybe 5 or 6 attacks per month. Now they were seeing 5 or 6 per day. "Why can we not simply maintain the system?" he demanded. The technician, a nervous Civine named Trell, worked frantically at his console. "Sir, the system is adaptive. It learns from each interaction and adjusts its algorithms. Commander Price designed it that way so it could stay ahead of pirate tactics. But without his updates, it is starting to make mistakes. Yesterday, it flagged a civilian transport as a threat. Today, it missed an actual raid ship entirely. Can you not update it yourself?" Trell's hands trembled. "I have tried, sir. We all have. But the code is extraordinarily complex. Commander Price once told me it took him 3 years just to develop the core framework. We have been trying to understand it for 3 months, and we are barely scratching the surface. The coordinator slammed his massive fist on the console, cracking the surface. Then hire someone. Find an expert. Sir. Commander Price was the expert. He trained our people, but he trained them to maintain the system, not to redesign it. What we need now is fundamental redesign, and we do not have anyone with that capability. Across the station, similar conversations were happening in different departments. The trade networks that humans had optimized were now running 20% slower. Ships that used to arrive on schedule were showing up late. Cargo that used to flow smoothly through checkpoints was getting stuck in bottlenecks. The Arxian trade minister had spent the last week fielding angry calls from merchants across the galaxy. In the diplomatic wing, things were even worse. Ambassador Lauren Hayes had spent 12 years building a fragile peace between the Krill and Vorthan empires, two species that had hated each other for centuries, finally talking instead of fighting. She had set up communication channels, established trust protocols, and created a framework for resolving disputes. Without her, that framework was crumbling. Prelate Vex Enar sat in his office, reading the latest messages from both empires. The Krill accused the Vorthans of violating territorial agreements. The Vorthans accused the Krill of aggressive military buildups. Both sides were demanding that the council intervene. What did Ambassador Hayes do in situations like this? Vex Enar asked his assistant. Pip pulled up the records. She would contact both sides immediately, usually within hours. She would listen to their complaints, verify the facts, and propose solutions. Most importantly, she would talk to them constantly, sometimes several times per day, maintaining personal relationships with key leaders on both sides. Vex Enar looked at the messages again. They had been sent 4 days ago. The council had only just scheduled a committee meeting to discuss how to respond. Send them both a message, he said. Tell them we are forming a response team. Sir, Ambassador Hayes would have already talked to them personally by now. I am aware of that, Pip. But we must follow proper procedure. We cannot simply react without consultation. The words felt hollow, even as he said them. The worst situation was on the frontier worlds. Dr. Michelle Santos had spent 8 years leading the climate restoration project on the Dren colony. The planet's atmosphere had been poisoned by industrial waste, and she had developed a system to clean it. Massive processing towers that filtered the air, reintroducing safe elements while removing toxins. It had worked. The planet was healing. People who had been evacuated were returning home, but the towers required constant maintenance and adjustments. Dr. Santos had overseen every detail personally, making small changes based on atmospheric readings, seasonal variations, and unexpected developments. Now the towers were starting to fail. The Dren governor sent daily messages to the council, each more desperate than the last. The atmospheric toxicity levels were rising again. Without Dr. Santos and her team, the automated systems were not adapting quickly enough. At the current rate, the planet would become uninhabitable again within a year. Can we not hire new experts? The governor pleaded in his latest message. Can someone not take over the project? The council's science division had tried. They had sent their best environmental engineers to Dren. But Dr. Santos's work was built on years of accumulated knowledge about that specific planet, its unique chemistry, its weather patterns, its ecosystem. Replacing her was not a matter of following instructions. It required understanding a living, changing system that she had intimate knowledge of. The new engineers were doing their best, but their best was not good enough. Vex Enar tried to contact Earth directly. He sent formal diplomatic requests. He sent personal messages to Ambassador Brooks. He even tried to send a vessel to human space, with a delegation ready to negotiate. Every attempt received the same response. An automated message, polite but final. Humanity is no longer accepting council representatives. Please respect our borders. This message will not be repeated. The vessel that approached human territory was met by defense platforms that powered up their weapons. Not threateningly, not aggressively, but with clear intent. The message was obvious. Do not cross this line. In the council chambers, the arguments grew louder and more desperate. Some delegates wanted to declare humanity in violation of treaties and impose sanctions. Others wanted to offer concessions to bring them back. A few suggested that military action might be necessary. Korla, the Savine science director, listened to the debates with growing sadness. She had worked with Dr. Santos for 6 years. They had been friends. On quiet evenings, they would share meals and talk about their work, their hopes for the galaxy, their frustrations with the council's slow pace. She remembered one conversation clearly. Dr. Santos had been angry that day. More angry than usual. A proposal to expand the Dren project to other poisoned worlds had been delayed for the 7th time. Do you know what the worst part is? Dr. Santos had said. It is not that they say no. I could accept no if they had good reasons. The worst part is that they say maybe. They say we need more studies, more analysis, more review. Meanwhile, people are dying on worlds we could save. We have the technology. We have the expertise. We have everything we need except the will to act. Korla had tried to defend the council's caution. These decisions affect billions of lives. We must be careful. Careful and cowardly are not the same thing, Dr. Santos had replied. But they look very similar from the outside. Now, sitting in the council chamber listening to yet another debate about how to respond to humanity's departure, Korla finally understood what her friend had meant. They were not discussing solutions. They were discussing the process of discussing solutions. They were forming committees to review the recommendations of other committees. They were scheduling meetings to plan future meetings. And while they talked, the pirate attacks continued. The trade networks slowed. The Krill and Vorthans moved closer to war. The humans had not just left. They had left behind a mirror. And the council was finally seeing its own reflection. Clearly, it was not a pleasant sight. 6 months after the humans departed, the frontier crisis reached its breaking point. The refugee camps stretched across 3 moons and 2 barren planets, makeshift cities housing 2 million beings who had fled war, famine, and ecological collapse. They lived in temporary shelters that were never meant to be permanent. They survived on food supplies that were running out. Captain Ryan Foster had been keeping them alive. His fleet of humanitarian vessels had operated on the edge of council authority for years, delivering food, medicine, and supplies to the camps. The council had never quite approved of his methods. He cut through bureaucracy, ignored proper channels, and made decisions on his own authority. Now his ships were gone, recalled to human space along with everything else. The camp administrator on Outpost 7 sent a desperate message to the council. We have food for 3 more weeks. Maybe 4, if we ration strictly. The medical supplies ran out yesterday. We have 16,000 children here. What are we supposed to do? The council held an emergency session. The debate lasted 11 hours. The Arxian representative argued that the camps were technically outside council jurisdiction, so direct intervention would violate sovereignty laws. The Keltharian coordinator insisted that military vessels could not be used for humanitarian work without proper authorization. The Vorthan delegate demanded guarantees that aid would not favor one species over another. By the time they finished talking, another day had passed. Another day, without food, reaching the camps. The frontier worlds watched this happen, and they made a decision of their own. 15 planetary governors held a secret meeting, their transmission encrypted and hidden from council monitors. They debated for less than an hour before reaching unanimous agreement. Their message did not go to the council. It went directly to Earth, to humanity. From the Frontier Alliance, the Galactic Council has shown us through their inaction that they value procedure over people. We have watched you work for 70 years. We have seen your efficiency, your pragmatism, and your willingness to act when action is needed. We are formally requesting direct partnership with humanity, outside of Council authority. We understand this may be controversial. We no longer care. Our people are dying while committees debate. If you will help us, we will stand with you. The response came within 6 hours. Not 6 days, not 6 weeks. 6 hours. Ambassador Kelvin Brooks appeared on screens across the frontier worlds. His message broadcast openly for everyone to hear. We stand ready to assist any world in need. We have always stood ready. The Council's bureaucracy prevented us from helping as much as we wanted to. Now we are free to act according to our values. We will not work through the Galactic Council. They have made their choice, and we have made ours. But to any world that asks for our help directly, we will respond. Send us your needs. We will send our ships. The response was immediate. Within 3 days, 17 worlds formally withdrew from the Galactic Council to establish direct partnerships with humanity. Within a week, it was 24. By the end of the month, 43 worlds had left. The exodus had begun. Prelate Vex Inar watched his council collapse in slow motion. Every day brought news of another departure. Each world that left gave the same reasons. Too slow, too cautious, too focused on process instead of results. The Arxian minister was furious. This is a coordinated attack on our institution. The humans are poaching our members. But Corla, the Savine science director, had a different perspective. They are not poaching. They are offering what we failed to provide. Action instead of debate. Results instead of reports. Why would any world stay with us when humanity offers them real solutions? The minister glared at her. You sound like you want to join them. I am considering it, Corla admitted. My home world is one of the 17 that left. They have asked me to return and help coordinate our partnership with humanity. They have offered me a position where I can actually make decisions without waiting for committee approval. She looked around the chamber. At the half-empty seats. At the delegates still clinging to their positions. We had something precious here. A chance to unite the galaxy under shared values. But we confused unity with uniformity, and we confused caution with wisdom. The humans understood the difference. We did not. The Caltharian coordinator stood, his 6 arms spread wide. Then go. Join them. But do not expect us to simply accept this theft of our members. What will you do? Corla asked. Declare war on 43 worlds and humanity? That would only prove their point about our judgment. Vexinar called for order before the argument could escalate further. But the damage was done. The council was fracturing, and everyone knew it. On the frontier worlds, the first human ships arrived with supplies. Not in 3 months, not in 3 weeks, but in 3 days. Captain Daniel Wright, who had served under Commander Price in Council security, led the relief effort. He did not wait for permission. He did not form committees. He assessed the situation, allocated resources, and acted. Within 2 weeks, the refugee camps had food. Within a month, they had medical facilities. Within 2 months, Captain Wright had organized a resettlement program, moving refugees to 16 different worlds that had volunteered to accept them. The operation was not perfect. There were mistakes, complications, and unforeseen problems. But when issues arose, they were addressed immediately, not debated endlessly. A reporter from one of the frontier worlds interviewed Captain Wright at a resettlement center. The council says your methods are reckless, that you act without proper oversight. Wright looked at the children playing in the center courtyard, healthy and fed and safe. The council debated the frontier crisis for 2 years and saved 0 lives. We have been here for 2 months and have resettled 300,000 refugees. Let the people decide which approach is reckless. The interview was broadcast across the galaxy. It went viral, shared on millions of worlds. The message was clear. Humanity got things done. Back at Council headquarters, Vexinar faced calls for his resignation. The remaining delegates argued about whose fault this was. Some blamed the humans for being impatient. Others blamed previous administrations for creating the bureaucracy. A few brave ones suggested that they should blame themselves for allowing it to continue. Vexinar appointed a reform committee, hoping to save the institution. The committee spent 3 weeks analyzing the problem and produced a 400-page report with modest recommendations. The main suggestion was to streamline some approval processes and reduce certain waiting periods. When asked when these reforms would be implemented, the committee chair said they would need to draft proposals, submit them for review, and allow time for debate. The process would take approximately 18 months. In those same 18 months, humanity and their coalition partners would build new trade networks, establish new defense alliances, and solve problems the Council had ignored for years. The galaxy was changing. The old order was dying, not through violence or conquest, but through irrelevance. And humanity, who had tried for 70 years to change the system from within, was building something new on the outside, something faster, leaner, and focused on one simple principle. When people need help, you help them. You do not debate. You do not delay. You act. The Galactic Council had forgotten that principle somewhere in its 3,000 years of existence. Now they were learning what it cost to forget. 8 months after humanity's departure, a data package appeared on networks across the galaxy. The source was anonymous, but the content was explosive. It was an archive. Thousands of documents, recordings, and correspondence from humanity's diplomatic delegation, covering 70 years of interaction with the Galactic Council. Someone had leaked everything. The journalist who broke the story was Brandon Cole, a human who had left Council space months earlier, but still had contacts throughout the galaxy. He published his analysis on every major news network, and within hours, the entire galaxy was reading it. This archive shows the truth about humanity's departure, Cole wrote. They left after 7 decades of trying to fix a broken system, after exhausting every option, after being ignored, dismissed, and patronized at every turn. The documents told the story piece by piece. Ambassador Brooks had submitted his first reform proposal in his 2nd year on the Council. It was modest, suggesting ways to speed up emergency response decisions. The proposal went to committee, where it was reviewed for 8 months. The committee's conclusion was that more study was needed. Brooks submitted a revised proposal. This one went to a different committee. Another year passed. Over 6 years, he submitted 17 different proposals. Each one was carefully researched, backed by data, and designed to address specific inefficiencies. Each one disappeared into the bureaucratic maze. The archive included his personal notes on the 7th proposal, written in frustration late one night. They do not want solutions. They want the appearance of considering solutions. There is a difference, and I am learning it slowly and painfully. Commander Lisa Warren's security warnings were even more damning. 14 months before the frontier crisis exploded, she had submitted a detailed report predicting exactly what would happen. She outlined the growing refugee problem, the strain on resources, the potential for catastrophic collapse. Her report included specific recommendations: immediate aid, rapid deployment of humanitarian resources, and coordination with local governments. She estimated the cost and the time frame. She showed that acting quickly would be far cheaper than dealing with a full crisis later. The report went to the Security Review Committee. They scheduled a meeting to discuss it. The meeting was postponed 3 times. When they finally met, they decided that the situation needed more monitoring before any action could be recommended. Warren submitted follow-up reports every month. Each one showed the situation getting worse. Each one was filed away for future consideration. By the time the Council finally agreed to act, the crisis had grown 10 times larger and far more expensive to address. Warner's notes on her final report were bitter. I told them this would happen. I gave them the data. I showed them the solution. They chose to wait and see. Now millions suffer because a committee could not make a decision. Dr. Michelle Santos's environmental work revealed similar patterns. She had identified 14 worlds with poisonous atmospheres that could be cleaned using techniques similar to those she used on Dren. The cost would have been manageable if they started early. The technology was proven. She submitted proposals for each world. Each proposal went through review. Each review requested more information. Each request for information required more meetings. By the time the council approved funding for even one additional world, the cost had tripled. The delays had allowed conditions to worsen, making the work harder and more expensive. The council then used the higher costs as justification to delay further. Santos had written in her personal log, "They are creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. They delay because they say it is too expensive. The delays make it more expensive. They use the increased expense to justify more delays. Meanwhile, people breathe poison and die." Captain Ryan Foster's humanitarian operations showed the same dysfunction. He had been operating his refugee supply missions with minimal budget, relying on donated resources and volunteer crews. He requested council funding dozens of times, showing that official support would allow him to help 10 times more people. The council praised his work publicly. They gave him awards and recognition, but they denied his funding requests, saying that proper procedures required more extensive review of humanitarian operations. Foster's communications with Brooks showed his growing frustration. They want the good publicity of helping refugees without actually committing resources. They want me to keep working miracles with nothing, so they can take credit without taking responsibility. I am tired of being their fig leaf. But the most devastating document in the archive was the transition plan. It showed that humanity had not left impulsively. They had been planning their departure for 3 full years. They had carefully documented every system they maintained. They had created detailed training programs for replacements. They had prepared comprehensive handover procedures. The plan was extraordinary in its thoroughness. Every critical system was mapped out. Every potential problem was identified. Every solution was explained in clear, simple language. The humans had sent this entire package to the council 6 months before they left. The council had received it, filed it in their record system, and never read it. They assumed it was a negotiating tactic, that humanity was trying to gain leverage for better positions or more influence. No one had bothered to actually look at what the humans were saying. Ambassador Brooks's final speech was in the archive, the one he had prepared but never delivered. He had planned to give it on the day they left, but decided against it, choosing instead to depart quietly. Reading it now, months later, the speech was heartbreaking in its sincerity. "We came to the council 70 years ago with hope," Brooks had written. "We believed we could be part of something greater than ourselves. We believed in the ideals this institution represented: peace, cooperation, unity. We still believe in those ideals, but ideals without action are empty. Values without commitment are meaningless. We have watched this council debate while worlds burned. We have seen perfect become the enemy of good 10,000 times. We have offered solutions and been told to wait. We have shown urgency and been told to be patient. We have demonstrated what is possible and been told it is not how things are done. We are not leaving in anger. We are leaving in sorrow. Sorrow for all the good that was delayed, diminished, or denied because the process mattered more than the outcome. We hope you find your way forward. We know we must find ours. We wish you nothing but the best. But we can no longer be part of a system that values appearance over action, consensus over courage, and procedure over people." The speech ended simply, "Goodbye, and good luck. You will need it." Katie Morrison, the junior analyst who had written the damning report about the frontier crisis, had also left personal logs in the archive. Her perspective as a younger diplomat showed how the dysfunction affected those who came to the council with idealism. "I joined the diplomatic service because I wanted to make a difference," she wrote. "I believed that working with other species, we could solve problems no one could solve alone. But this place does not solve problems. It manages them. It contains them. It delays them. But it does not solve them. Every day is a battle just to get basic things done. You propose a solution, and they ask you to study it more. You provide studies, and they ask for different studies. You provide those, and they form a committee. The committee meets for months and recommends forming a subcommittee. The subcommittee requests more information. By the time you get through the process, the original problem has changed or gotten worse or been forgotten. The worst part is not the inefficiency. The worst part is that they do not see it as a problem. They see it as proper procedure. They think this is how things should work. They have confused process with progress for so long that they cannot tell the difference anymore. Her final entry was written the day before she left. I am 28 years old, and I am already exhausted. How did Brooks do this for 12 years? How did Santos keep trying for 8? I am in awe of their patience. But I am done being patient. Life is too short to spend it pushing paper while people die. The archive spread across the galaxy like a virus. Everyone read it. Everyone had opinions. Some defended the council, saying that humanity was impatient and did not understand the complexity of galactic governance. But these voices grew quieter as more people read the actual documents and saw the pattern of delay, dismissal, and dysfunction. Most people were shocked. They had not known. The council had presented itself as a well-functioning institution, and most species had believed it. Now they saw the truth. Public opinion shifted dramatically. Protests erupted on dozens of worlds, demanding that their governments reconsider council membership. Opinion polls showed approval ratings for the council dropping to historic lows, and through it all, humanity remained silent. They did not gloat. They did not attack. They simply continued building their coalition, working with worlds that wanted to partner with them, and proving through action that there was another way. The archive had not destroyed the Galactic Council, but it had destroyed the illusion that the council was working properly. And sometimes, destroying an illusion is the first step toward change. 1 year after humanity's departure, the Galactic Council met in a chamber that felt too large for the number of delegates present. 43 worlds had withdrawn completely. Another 27 had reduced their participation to observer status, sending representatives to meetings but refusing to commit resources or follow council directives. Of the original 200-member worlds, barely half remained fully engaged. Prelate Vexinar stood at the central podium, looking at the empty seats. Entire blocks sat unused, silent reminders of what the council had lost. He had called this session to discuss the Reform Committee's final recommendations. After a year of study, they had produced their report. It suggested modest changes to voting procedures, slight reductions in committee review times, and updated communication protocols. The reforms would take 2 years to implement fully. Corla, who had stayed with the council despite her homeworld's departure, stood to speak. She had become an unofficial voice for those who wanted real change, though she often felt like she was shouting into a void. These recommendations are insufficient, she said bluntly. They tinker at the edges while ignoring the fundamental problem. We are still prioritizing process over results. We are still choosing caution over action. We are still the same institution that drove humanity away. The Arxian minister, who had survived multiple votes of no confidence, bristled at her words. The council has existed for 3,000 years. We cannot simply abandon our principles because one species grew impatient. 43 species, Corla corrected. And they did not grow impatient. They waited 70 years. They tried to work within our system. They exhausted every option. When someone tries that hard for that long and still leaves, perhaps the problem is not their impatience, but our stubbornness. The debate continued for hours, going in circles as it always did. Eventually, they voted to accept the Reform Committee's recommendations and began the slow process of implementation. Meanwhile, beyond council space, the coalition of direct action was thriving. The organization's headquarters was on Earth, in a building that had once housed humanity's council delegation. But the coalition was not a human organization. It was a partnership of 70 worlds, each with equal voice and equal responsibility. Commander Lisa Warren stood in the Situation Room, reviewing the latest reports. The coalition had just finished a major operation, rescuing a mining colony that had been under attack by raiders. The entire operation, from initial distress call to final evacuation, had taken less than 48 hours. Captain Daniel Wright was debriefing the security team. The raiders were using hit-and-run tactics, striking the mining facilities and disappearing before local defenses could respond. We deployed 3 fast response ships, tracked their base using the security network, and disabled their vessels. No casualties on our side. Minimal damage to the colony. The miners are safe. How long from distress call to deployment? Warren asked. 90 minutes. We had ships in a neighboring system. As soon as the call came through, we authorized immediate response. 90 minutes. Warren remembered when she had worked for the council, when a response like that would have required emergency committee meetings, risk assessments, and authorization protocols that took days or weeks. Good work, she said. Make sure the miners know they can contact us directly if they have future problems. And send the after-action report to all coalition members so they can learn from this. This was the coalition's strength. When problems arose, they shared solutions immediately. When innovations worked, they spread them quickly. There was no hoarding of knowledge, no bureaucratic gatekeeping, no endless review processes. The frontier crisis, which the council had debated for 2 years, had been resolved by the coalition in 4 months. The refugee camps were gone, not because people had been deported, but because they had been resettled. 16 worlds had volunteered to accept refugees, and the coalition had organized the logistics. It had not been perfect. There had been challenges with cultural integration, language barriers, and resource allocation. But when problems arose, they were addressed immediately through direct communication between the affected worlds. The Dren colony was healing again. Dr. Michelle Santos had returned personally to oversee the climate restoration, working directly with local scientists. Without council bureaucracy slowing her down, she had already expanded the project to 3 other poisoned worlds. The trade networks that had slowed after humanity's departure were now running faster than ever. But on coalition routes rather than council ones, merchants had discovered that dealing directly with worlds, without council regulatory overhead, was simpler and more profitable. The piracy problem that had exploded after Commander Price's security network collapsed was now under control, but through coalition coordination, rather than council authority. Slowly, inevitably, the galaxy was reorganizing itself around a new center. Ambassador Kelvin Brooks gave few interviews, preferring to let the coalition's work speak for itself. But when a major news network requested a conversation on the anniversary of humanity's departure, he agreed. The interviewer was a Savine journalist named Mira who had covered the council for 20 years. She asked the question everyone wanted answered. Ambassador Brooks, do you regret leaving the council? Brooks considered the question carefully. He was older now, grayer, with lines around his eyes from decades of diplomatic stress. But when he spoke, his voice was calm and certain. I regret that it became necessary. We spent 70 years trying to change the council from within. We advocated. We compromised. We demonstrated alternatives. We tried everything we could think of to help that institution live up to its ideals. But some institutions become so invested in their own procedures that they lose sight of their purpose. The council was created to protect and serve galactic civilization. Instead, it became a monument to its own complexity. It became a place where good intentions went to die in committee meetings. So no, I do not regret leaving. I regret that we could not fix it. But I will never regret choosing to act according to our values, rather than continuing to enable dysfunction. End quote. Mira leaned forward. The council says they are implementing reforms. Do you think they can change? I hope they can, Brooks said, and he sounded sincere. If the council can reform itself into an effective institution, that would be wonderful. Competition might even help both organizations become better. But I am not holding my breath. Real change requires admitting fundamental mistakes, and institutions rarely do that. It is easier to tinker at the edges than to rebuild the foundation. Would humanity ever return to the Council? Brooks smiled slightly. The Council is welcome to join us in the coalition. We believe in cooperation. We believe in collective action, but we will never again subordinate urgent action to endless deliberation. The universe does not wait for committees to reach consensus while people suffer. We learned that lesson over 70 years. It was a hard lesson, paid for in opportunities lost and lives that could have been saved. We will not forget it. The interview ended, but the message spread across the galaxy. It was not triumphant or angry. It was simply firm. Humanity had made its choice and would stand by it. On the frontier worlds, where the coalition had resolved the refugee crisis, they built a monument. It showed representatives from different species working together. Sleeves rolled up, focused on a task. The inscription was simple. They did not debate. They acted. Matter. They acted. It became a symbol of the coalition's approach, and similar monuments appeared on other worlds. The Galactic Council continued to function. They held their meetings, passed their resolutions, and maintained their procedures. But everyone knew the truth. The center of galactic civilization had shifted. Prelate Vexinar worked late most nights now, reviewing reports and trying to stem the tide of departures. Some nights, he would access the archived messages from the early days, when humans first joined the Council. He found one from Ambassador Brooks, sent during his first year, full of optimism and hope. We are honored to join this institution. Together, we can build something greater than any of us could achieve alone. The challenges ahead are significant, but I believe in what we can accomplish through cooperation and shared values. Reading it now, Vex Inar felt something close to grief. They had been offered partnership and had chosen hierarchy. They had been offered innovation and had chosen tradition. They had been offered urgency and had chosen process. And now, they were learning that some opportunities only come once. In the coalition headquarters, Commander Warren was briefing the assembly on their next mission. A mining colony was under attack. The briefing took 15 minutes, covering the situation, the resources needed, and the proposed response. The vote to authorize deployment took 2 minutes. The mission launched within hours. 70 worlds working together, making decisions quickly, acting decisively, and accepting that imperfect action was better than perfect paralysis. This was the world humanity had built, not through conquest or force, but by demonstrating that there was another way. By proving that speed and thoughtfulness were not opposites, that efficiency and care could coexist. That bureaucracy was a tool, not a master. The Galactic Council still existed, still held meetings, still debated. But the galaxy had moved on, following those who chose action over discussion, results over procedure, and courage over caution. And in the end, that was the most damning judgment of all. Not destruction, but irrelevance. Not opposition, but indifference. The humans had not destroyed the Council. They had simply shown there was a better way, and the galaxy had noticed.